Hi, in this video, we'll be introduced to percents and we'll take a look at how percents convert to fractions. Okay, so the word percent is exactly what it sounds like. The per part means, well, per, and the cent part means per 100. Oops, that should have been 100. All right, so when you see the word percent, for example, 50%, that really means 50 out of or per 100. Now, it would be a lot to have to write 50 out of 100 every single time. So there's actually a sign that represents percent. And the sign that represents percent is the percentage sign. So this is the same thing as saying 50%. 50% means 50 out of 100. So I can write this thing in this way, in all three ways. All right, so now that we understand what percent means, let's look at how to take a percentage and convert it to a fraction. And since we were talking about 50%, let's go ahead and use 50% in our example. So example, convert 50% to a fraction in its most simplified form. So I'm not going to write in its most simplified form, but assume that that's the requirement. Okay, so 50% really means 50 per 100 or 50 out of 100. So this is 50 out of 100. And so now in order to simplify it, we want to find a greatest common factor for the numerator and the denominator. So the greatest common factor for the numerator and the denominator in this case is 50. So we can go ahead and divide both the numerator and the denominator by 50 to get this percent as a fraction in its most simplified form. And we get 1 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. So 50% is really a half. Now, this is a very common percentage that comes up, but we can convert things that are less common. Let's take a look at an example. Okay, so very similar question, but now we have 45%. So we go ahead and put 45 over 100 because percent means out of 100. And we think of the GCF, the greatest common factor. In this case, the greatest common factor is 5, so we divide the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5. And when we do, we get the numerator to be 9 and the denominator to be 20. And so 45% is really 9 over 20. All right, so now that we understand how to take a percent and convert it to a fraction, what I want us to look at really briefly is some common conversions that happen, some conversions that we don't want to have to do over and over and over because they are so frequent. Okay, so here are some very common percents that show up all the time. We already spoke about 50% and we saw how 50% was converted to a half by simplifying or percentage. All right, 10%, 20%, 25%, so on and so forth. So if you go ahead and try any of these out, these are the fractions you'll get. I suggest you memorize these. I would go ahead and convert them just to make sure, memorize them, just so you don't have to do them over and over and over again. All right, hope that helps.